The director of the most underfunded homeless shelter in Los Angeles looked Keanu Reeves in the eye and told him he was not welcome, not because of anything he had said, not because of anything he had done, because of what he represented. A celebrity, a camera crew, a feel-good story, and she had seen enough of those to last her 3 lifetimes. He nodded once, said he understood, and sat down on the curb outside the front door to wait. He had no security, no publicist, no phone pressed to his ear. Just a man in a gray hoodie and worn jeans, sitting on a concrete curb in the dark, watching the door like he had all the time in the world. 4 hours later, she came back out. What happened next would not appear in any press release. No one would tweet about it for 2 years. And when the story finally surfaced, in a small paragraph buried at the end of a local newspaper feature about shelter funding, it quietly spread across the country until the phone at Sunridge Open Door on West Adams Boulevard did not stop ringing for 11 days. There is a shelter in Los Angeles called Sunridge Open Door. It operates out of a converted warehouse on West Adams Boulevard, 4 blocks from where the 10 freeway overpass throws its shadow across the sidewalk until mid-afternoon. The building has been there since 1987. The roof was patched in 2019, with a grant that came through 6 months late and $4,000 short. There are 94 beds. On any given night, there are between 130 and 160 people inside. It is not the kind of place that appears in charity brochures. There is no gleaming lobby. There is no receptionist. There is a hand-lettered sign on the front door that reads, "All are welcome." Al means all. The sign is faded. The tape holding its corner up has been replaced so many times, the wall underneath has a ghost of residue that no cleaning product has fully removed. The people who sleep at Sunridge are not abstractions. They are veterans with discharge paperwork they cannot translate into employment. They are women who left situations the police had stopped taking seriously. They are men who held jobs until their bodies stopped cooperating and the medical bills made the rest of the math impossible. They range in age from 19 to 81. On cold nights, volunteers sleep in their cars in the parking lot to run the overflow. The director of Sunridge is a woman named Clara Osei-Bonsu. She is 53 years old. She has run the shelter for 14 years. Before that, she ran the intake desk. Before that, she spent 8 months as a resident herself, when her youngest was 3 months old and the man she had married turned out to be someone she had never actually met. She does not tell this story easily. She does not tell it often. When she does, she always ends it the same way. It took me 2 years after I left to stop being ashamed of having needed help. I am not going to let that happen to anyone who comes through my door. Clara Osei-Bonsu had seen every version of the celebrity shelter visit by the time Keanu Reeves appeared at her door on a Tuesday evening in November. She had seen the camera-first arrivals, the ones where a publicist called on a Monday to confirm timing and ask about lighting. She had seen the ones who arrived in clean clothes and posed with residents for 20 minutes before a prepared lunch they did not eat. She had seen the ones who brought checks. Not small checks either. Real money, sometimes, but real money with conditions attached. A naming opportunity, a press release draft pre-approved by their team. A request that the donation be announced at a specific industry event where the timing was helpful. She was not cynical about these visits because she was ungrateful. She was clear-eyed about them because she could not afford not to be. The check was real. The soup kitchen would still be operating in January because of it. But the residents of Sunridge were not props, and they were not causes. And Clara had spent 14 years being precise about that distinction in a way that cost her 3 major donors and 2 board members and a partnership with a media company whose representative had left the building red-faced, having been told, quietly but without apology, that Sunridge was not available for content. She knew who Keanu Reeves was. She had grown up watching his films. Erson quoted him back to her on days when things were difficult, lines she recognized even when she pretended she didn't. She did not dislike the man. She had no reason to. But when his assistant called on a Monday and described the project, a one-night visit, no camera crew, just the actor and a longtime friend who worked in social services, Clara had heard the part that made her stop writing what she was writing and put down her pen. He wants to stay the night, in a bed, with the residents. She had asked the assistant to repeat that. She sat with it for the rest of the afternoon. The call came at 6:47 in the evening. Keanu Reeves was in the parking lot. He had arrived in a dark blue sedan that he had parked at the far end, away from the entrance. His friend, a man named Daniel Park, who ran a transitional housing nonprofit in East Los Angeles, was with him. They were both wearing the same category of clothing: old jeans, hoodies, worn shoes. Nothing that announced itself. Clara came to the door and looked at them from the step. She had made her decision that afternoon. She had thought it through carefully, the way she thought everything through, and she had arrived at the same place she always arrived at when she was unsure. What serves the people inside that building? She told him they could not stay. She cited plainly, without hostility. She explained that the residents of Sunridge had not consented to share their sleeping space with a famous person who might, even with the best intentions, alter the dynamic of a place that ran entirely on trust. She sighed that the work of shelter was invisible work, invisible by design, and that even a well-intentioned intrusion created a ripple that was harder to smooth out than it looked from the outside. She told him she appreciated the impulse. She meant it. Keanu listened to all of it without interrupting. Then he said, "I understand. I'll wait." She had not expected that. "Wait for what?" she asked. "For you to tell me what I can actually do," he said. "If there's nothing, I'll go home. But if there's something, even something small, I'd like to help." He sat down on the curb. Daniel Park sat down beside him. Clara looked at them for a moment, then went back inside. The night at Sunridge Open Door runs on a volunteer framework that Clara calls, without irony, the invisible engine. There are people who have been coming every Tuesday for 11 years. There are people who showed up once after a personal loss and never stopped showing up. There are people who do not speak much English but wash dishes with a thoroughness that leaves the kitchen staff quietly moved. There are also the nights when the engine runs short. That Tuesday, the woman who usually managed the linen distribution had called in with a family emergency. The man who ran the informal homework help table for residents' children. A retired teacher named Gerald, 71 years old, who brought his own colored pencils and kept them in a tin, had an appointment he could not move. 3 of the overnight shift volunteers had confirmed that morning and not arrived by 8 p.m. Clara came back outside at 10:17. She did not apologize for the wait. She handed Keanu Reeves a list. "Linens," she said. "The laundry runs in 3 cycles. Each cycle needs to be folded and sorted by bed size. The label system is on the wall above the table. If you can do that without talking to anyone who doesn't talk to you first, you can come inside." He stood up, read the list, and nodded. "What's the second thing?" he asked. She looked at him. He was reading ahead. "Cheryl's table," she said. "He does homework help. 3 kids tonight. Maybe 4. 2nd grade math, middle school reading. If you sit down and let them lead and you don't make it a story, you can take his spot." He said, "All right." Ed did not ask for clarification. He did not ask if there would be anyone taking photos. He picked up the laundry list and followed her inside. What happened over the next 6 hours was not remarkable in the way the internet would later describe it. It folded linens for 2 hours and 40 minutes. The label system was more complex than it appeared. 4 sorting categories, color-coded tags that had faded over a decade of washing, a set of refolding instructions taped to the wall in a font size that required standing close to read. He made 2 sorting errors in the first cycle. The overnight coordinator, a 28-year-old named Priya, who had been volunteering at Sunridge since her sophomore year of college, corrected him both times without looking up from her clipboard. Ed thanked her and corrected the pile. Ed did not mention who he was. Nobody asked. The homework table was in a corner of the main room, near the windows. Gerald's colored pencils were in their tin on the table, where someone had thoughtfully left them. There were 4 children that night. A 7-year-old named Marcus, who was working on subtraction with borrowing. A 10-year-old named Destiny, who had a book report on a chapter book she had not finished. An 11-year-old named Tomas, who was doing fractions. And a 4-year-old named Lily, who did not have homework but had commandeered 2 pencils and was drawing something she described as a horse, but also a dog. Keanu sat down and let them lead. Marcus explained subtraction with borrowing to him, unprompted, with a 7-year-old's thoroughness. Destiny negotiated the terms of the book report. She had read the first 4 chapters and the last chapter, and she argued with genuine conviction that this was enough. Tomas worked in silence, occasionally pushing his paper toward the center of the table to check his answer against nothing in particular. Lily showed him the horse dog twice. At one point, Marcus looked at him and said, "You look like someone." Keanu said, "Everybody looks like someone." Marcus considered this. Then he went back to his subtraction. At 2 a.m., Clara found him in the kitchen. It was drying dishes. The overnight kitchen volunteer had finished the main washing and gone home 20 minutes ago. The drying rack was full and there was no one left to clear it. She stood in the doorway for a moment. She had run Sunridge for 14 years. She had seen, in that time, 12 celebrities come through the door. She had seen genuine kindness and performed kindness and the specific variety of genuine kindness that still required an audience to feel real. She had become, through no desire of her own, an expert in the distance between the thing and its performance. She was looking at a man drying dishes at 2 in the morning because the rack was full and someone had to. She made 2 cups of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. He sat across from her. The building was quiet in the particular way that a shelter is quiet late at night. Not empty, but resting. Not peaceful, but suspended. She asked him why he was really here. It was quiet for a moment. "I had a friend," he said. "He was on the streets for 2 years. Nobody knew. Not me, not anyone who thought they knew him well. It didn't tell us because he thought we'd try to fix it instead of just be there. He was right. He knew us." He turned his coffee cup in his hands. "It's okay now, but I keep thinking about all the days I could have just been somewhere, done something, dried some dishes." Clara looked at him. "What was his name?" she asked. He told her. She nodded slowly. "Tell me about him," she said. He did. They sat in the kitchen until 3:30 in the morning, talking about a man neither of them had spoken about honestly in longer than they wanted to admit. At 4 a.m., Clara walked him to the door. He shook her hand. Daniel Park, who had spent the evening helping with the overnight intake and had been so quiet and useful that Priya had tried to add him to the volunteer schedule before asking his name, shook her hand too. Keanu stopped at the door. "What do you actually need?" he asked. "Not what sounds good. What would make the next 6 months easier?" Clara did not hesitate. She had been running the math on the roof repair extension for 3 weeks. $18,000 and a reliable Thursday volunteer for the homework table, she said. "Gerald's knees are going. He needs someone to share the load." He nodded. He took a folded piece of paper from his pocket. She realized he had been carrying it and wrote something down. "Give me 2 weeks," he said. He left. The dark blue sedan pulled out of the parking lot and turned onto West Adams Boulevard and disappeared. In the 2 weeks that followed, Clara received a call from a foundation she had never heard of. A small, private giving vacuum that did not have a website and did not appear in any charitable giving directory, confirming a donation of $22,000 to Sunridge Open Door, unrestricted, with no reporting requirements attached. She read the confirmation letter 3 times. On the 3rd Thursday after that Tuesday, a man she had not seen before arrived at the homework table at 6:30 p.m. He was in his late 40s. His name was Robert. He had retired from teaching 4th grade 18 months earlier, after 31 years in the Los Angeles Unified School District. He sat down, opened his bag, and took out his own colored pencils. He did not explain how he had heard about the table. Clara did not ask. He has been there every Thursday since. The story did not appear in the press for 2 years. When it did, it was not because Keanu Reeves spoke about it. He has never spoken about it publicly. The paragraph that ran in the West Adams Chronicle, a local paper that covers the neighborhoods along the 10 corridor, came from a volunteer who had been in the building that night and who, after Sunridge, received its 3rd donation in 2 months from sources it could not identify, put together what had happened and called a reporter she knew. The reporter called Clara for comment. Clara sighed. He came in, he did the work, he left. That's the whole story. Everything after that is his business. When the story spread, first locally, then further, the phone at Sunridge rang for 11 days without stopping. Donations arrived from 43 states. 12 people called asking to volunteer at the homework table. A retired schoolteacher in Portland, Oregon, mailed a tin of colored pencils with a note that said only, "For Gerald's table," whoever that is. Clara keeps that note in the drawer of her desk. I have thought about this story more times than I expected to. Not because of the donation, Not even because of what he said in the kitchen at 2 in the morning. Though I think about that too. I think about it because of the first 4 hours. Because A sat down on a curb when the door was closed to him. Because he did not argue, or explain his intentions, or invoke the good he was trying to do. He said, I understand. And he waited. I do not know if I would have done that. I think most of us, told we were not welcome somewhere we had come to help, would feel the injustice of it, would want to make the case for ourselves, would find, somewhere in the discomfort, the impulse to correct the person who had misjudged us. He just sat down and waited. He kept coming back to that, the specific smallness of it, the decision not to fight for the right to do good, but to wait and see whether the good was actually wanted. Maybe that is what grace looks like from the outside. Not the grand gesture, not the check or the press release, just a man on a curb, in the dark, willing to be told no and staying anyway. I am not sure I have ever done that. I think about whether I could. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves' well-known reputation for quiet generosity and genuine humility. What stayed with you from this one? Drop a comment. I read them all, and I'd genuinely like to know. If you know someone who could use this story today, someone who is tired or doubting whether small acts of decency still mean anything, share it with them. That is the only reason to pass it on. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. One, there are others coming. See you in the next one.